That's
But
not free market. I thought you just argued for the free market. So those jobs going to all those other countries, that's just the
wait,
free
how's that?
market, bro.
No, the
Cope.
free American
Cope.
market. Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's
They're
it's it's
not.
actually, look,
Milton Friedman
government.
would not agree with you. Okay, why do you support Trump?
I I'm very pro tariff. Um, I think this policy we've had for decades, where we outsource manufacturing to foreign sources, is a bad idea. I mean, that's one
Okay.
reason.
Okay, so how do you feel about the fact that domestic manufacturing investment has declined every single quarter of Trump's administration so far?
Well, so how many quarters is that? Six. So imagine what's going to happen in 6 quarters. We've had decades and decades of outsourcing manufacturing, things like steel, right? Let's take steel for instance. We need steel for other manufacturing, not just steel manufacturing. Bringing that back takes time. Would you agree? Like, we got to set up the infrastructure, investing. Uh, it's very difficult to snap your fingers and set this up. Would you agree with that?
We had steel tariffs under the Biden administration. No one disputes the need for targeted tariffs. Universalized tariffs is what we're disputing the need for.
Well, but you would agree that bringing back something like steel that we need for a lot of different kinds of manufacturing is important. And so,
Yeah,
if
the
that is a
Democrats did that.
big if that is a big factor to other manufacturing, we want to make as much steel here as we can, and that's the reason for the tariffs, or that's the reason for some of the tariffs, right? So that's a domino effect, right? We get car manufacturing. We get, like my mom worked at a place in Ozark, Missouri that made motors for air conditioning systems or something like that. It employed thousands of people in the 90s. It just up and left thousands of jobs from small town America. Um, and that was directly related to these policies where we made it where we it's cheaper to go, I think it was Mexico, and make these things than it is here in America. I mean, I think we're all on the same page. I would assume you included. That's not a good thing. And so bringing that back, reversing that process doesn't happen overnight. So citing something like that, it's been 6 quarters and where's all the jobs? That's not the full story. Just my opinion. Um, but that's one reason why I support Trump.
Okay, so again, all you outlined was the need for targeted tariffs, which existed under the Democrats' administration as well, and not the need for universalized tariffs. Can we agree that targeted and universalized tariffs not only have different impacts on the economy, but also, like, we can agree that universalized tariffs are bad?
I would have I would have to know exactly what you're talking about. Tariffs on absolutely everything you're saying,
Yeah,
blanketed tariffs. Yeah, I
yeah,
could agree on that. I could agree on that.
that's what
But you
Trump
would
did.
agree too that targeted tariffs, like whatever Biden and Clinton and Bush and Obama and the rest were and Reagan were doing, was leading to an outcome that was undesirable.
It seems like
And
what
this
Biden
is
did
this
actually
is
led to an outcome that was desirable because it led to manufacturing investment coming back to this country.
so I don't know the numbers. I mean,
I
I
can
have a
show you on the
job, but
screen. Would you like to
you,
see?
hang on. I haven't asked my question yet. I don't know the numbers. You have access to this, and you do this for a living, I assume. Um, but I'm assuming that manufacturing over the last 30 years, we're not back to where we were before some of these policies that outsourced all these different jobs and all this manufacturing. Is that true?
This is 2007. This goes all the way back to 2007. We're way higher than we were in
So so
2007,
so
accounting
so
for inflation.
that's like per capita accounting for
Yeah, this is
inflation.
accounting for inflation.
Okay, so how about this? How much manufacturing is done outside of America then versus now? Do you have those numbers?
I would have to look at those particular numbers. The
Because
point
that's
that the
important too, right?
can
Because
can we address the
that,
point that I was making though? That was
yeah, go
relative to
ahead,
the
go
Biden
ahead.
administration, the Trump administration. That the Biden administration we saw massive growth in investment relating to manufacturing, and under the Trump administration we've seen massive decline in investment relating to manufacturing. Can we at least
What,
acknowledge
what
that point to be true?
I absolutely acknowledge that. One reason we would expect to see that, right, is we're trying to
Okay.
reverse this many decade policy of
Mm-hmm.
taking jobs and bringing back that infrastructure and the rest. But
So why would we
let's look
expect
at
to
how
see a
many.
decline in investment if we want to bring back that investment? That doesn't really make any sense.
Well, we will see more investment as we um, do more and more manufacturing, like steel and things. I mean, this is what this
Wait,
promotes, right? Why would this not promote? Why would tariffs not promote
can
American
I tell
steel
you why?
production, for example? Yeah, let me know.
Wait, so it targeted tariffs with American steel could, but universalized tariffs won't because they will increase the cost of materials that these manufacturers rely upon here in this country in order to be able to produce products, which will make that manufacturing process more expensive, therefore disincentivizing the manufacturing process within the country.
Well, I would disagree. I mean, yeah, things may cost more money, but supply and demand is supply and demand in a free market, and that means if there's a demand for it, the price will be raised, and that will have an effect. I mean,
We're talking about the
um,
level of investment.
I'm talking about the supply and demand aspect. You're saying that universal tariffs are
If
going
it
to
were to be
increase the
incentive,
cost
no,
of
no.
everything, which I
Here's the
agree with.
actual understanding. If it were to have been incentivized to a greater extent, we would have seen more investment.
So your problem is that we need to incentivize it more.
Yeah,
Okay, so how would we
that's
incentivize it
how
more?
you create more manufacturing, is you incentivize it more. What the Biden
Well, this
administration did,
incentivizes it a
the
whole
infrastructure
lot.
bill, the Chips and Science Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, you have to directly invest in infrastructure development within this country. That's
Oh,
how you
you're
see
talking
gains.
about government investment versus private investment. Is that
Of
correct?
course. I mean,
Take,
what
taking money from
private
workers'
investment is
paycheck.
determined by people that are not a part of the government. So if you're talking about
Yeah,
what
I'm
should the
talking about
government do, the government should do with what it can to be able to stimulate the investment within that industry. That's what you're saying
okay.
it should do with
So
tariffs,
we're
right?
we're coming from totally different places.
Well,
I
that's what
ev-
tariffs are, right?
so I'm
Tariffs
coming
are a
from a
specific
place
thing
that
that you're trying to impose to change the incentives that exist in society to then incentivize people to engage in domestic production. And what I'm saying is that I just want to use the government to change incentives to be able to get people to invest in manufacturing in this country. But my process is actually out effective of doing so and has outcomes that actually have been beneficial, whereas your process hasn't been effective and hasn't proven to be a good solution.
Well, let's back up a little bit. First of all, your process, not your process, but the process of the last 30 years has taken jobs to foreign lands. I don't think anybody's disputing that, right? So if that happens, I want to change that. And the way we change that is not
You keep
with
repeating that.
taking
We've
tax
already
dollars
responded to
out
this
of.
multiple times.
I, I
Who is
haven't I
actually
haven't even
creating an
said this
increase
yet.
in
This is a
investment?
brand
It's
new.
the Democrats, not the Republicans.
You're so focused on this. Watch this. The money that is invested. You're saying we should take it from Parker's paycheck
Yeah.
and invest it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, here's what I'm saying. Watch this real close. I am not saying put a something to Parker's head and take his money from him. I am saying free market
So
investment
do
here.
nothing.
Okay? And no,
Well,
absolutely
because we're
not.
talking about what the
People,
government
watch
should
this.
do, right?
That
And you're saying
never
the government
happens.
should leave it up to the free market, which literally means do nothing.
The reason I think that they should leave it up to the free market, no, absolutely not. Since when are people going to look at investment opportunities and say, nah, I'm going to keep the money under my pillow where it earns nothing when I could invest it in this thing? Obviously, that's not how the free market works. How government works is they take Parker's money, they run it through 4 or 5 sleazy politicians, they take their cut, and in the end, a dollar
That's
of
called
your
a straw
investment ends
man.
up to
Do you know what
be.
you just did is called a straw man? You said everyone just takes their
I,
cuts,
I'm
and
not.
you're not even
Watch
acting
this.
like it
Watch
provides a
this.
service or a benefit to
Okay, let me
anyone.
know when I can talk.
Well, I mean, if you just engaged in a straw man, did you
Okay.
not?
So does this not happen? Is government not an intermediary between Parker and what needs to happen with that money when what they say that is going to happen with that money? Like if Parker goes and gives his money to the homeless guy or helps a homeless guy and spends his money versus if he runs it through Washington D.C., which one's more effective? Can
I
you
would
do a
say
better
that
job?
the government doing so on an overall standpoint is more effective than an individual
Oh my
person being able to do
goodness.
something. That's just the
Okay,
reality because
that
of the
is
access
not the
to
reality.
resources that the government has as opposed to a single individual.
Watch this. Why in the world would you say that
Why do you think
you
we have
taking
Social
a
Security?
dollar
Why do we have
doing
why do we have wait,
everything?
no, answer the
Social
question. Why
Security
do
is
we have
awful.
Social Security? Why do we have Medicare? Why do we have Medicaid? Why do we have unemployment insurance? Because the government providing it is more effective than if we were just to leave it up to private charity or just leave it up to the free market itself. The free market in of itself, just saying leave it up to the free market means government will do nothing. You figure it out yourself. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Do it yourself. There's not going to be anyone here in terms of the government to help you in terms of establishing a baseline for everyone within our society. So actually, all you're saying is your side will do nothing for the American people to increase their quality of life, whereas my side is saying here are active solutions that we can engage in that will actively be able to increase the quality of life, and here are outcomes that represent those very policy positions in the first place. Who do you think has a better position that more people are going to take into consideration for which side they are going to support? The person that's saying, oh, I'm going to do nothing, just leave it up to you, or the person that says, oh, there are going to be things that are going to be left up to you, but I'm going to provide necessary support for people in society, that if you can't hold yourself up at a certain moment, that there's going to be a society there for you to help you.
Sir, I'm going to restate what you just said. You tell me if any part of this is wrong. You just told me that Parker taking his $10 and doing the most good in the world is not as efficient as sending it to Washington, D.C. and running it through this machine and seeing how much that $10 helps on the other side. Did I quote you right there? Is that correct?
No, I think you're misunderstanding my position, because when you have
Okay.
taxation is mandatory. Okay, it's not just leaving it up to the person. Okay, if you just leave it up to the person, it's not as effective in terms of private investment or private charity as literally having mandatory taxation from a federal government perspective, that they have a greater access to resources. You can have both under my position. There's private charity and there's also governmental baseline for everybody. And then under your system, it's just left up to the private charity, which inevitably can't take care of everyone. And that's why, inevitably speaking, prior to the implementation of these programs, we had significantly higher levels of elder poverty, right, of people dying at an earlier standpoint because of the fact that they didn't get access to basic healthcare services that they need when they're older. That's why we implemented these programs, and that's why they're important.
It sounds like, and again, I don't want to misquote you, but do you think you can do more good with other people's money than they can? Do you think you and the government can do more good with people's money than they can? Because the numbers, I would guess, do not support that. I mean, these
They
programs
actually
are
do.
awful.
Like, I mean, you just like are ignoring Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and all those different social services that
Okay,
people
let's
rely
talk about
upon,
Social
that have
Security.
heavily reduced the likelihood of people being disenfranchised within our society. You're completely ignoring those facts.
Okay, so let's go where you want to go with this. Social Security. So Social Security, if right now, well, you're a
Can
1099,
we
I'm assuming,
agree?
right?
Actually, but can we
If you,
pause this real quick? Can we
sure.
agree that Social Security radically decreased the level of senior poverty?
No, we absolutely cannot.
Okay, then
Absolutely
you're
not.
just denying reality.
Okay, I would say the same. But
What
watch
was the
this. Watch
level of
this.
senior poverty prior to the implementation of Social Security, and then what was it after?
Well, you're saying you're trying. I don't know the exact answer to your question, but here's my point. If you could take the money that has been put in Social Security for you, you're a young guy, I assume, and you could put the money in that your employer has put in for you, or you could go down to the sleaziest Edwards Jones investment mini mall guy you could and mimic the S&P 500. What would you want to happen to your money, Parker?
You have to understand that I also want to fund Social Security through some sort of investment program or sovereign wealth fund. I think that's a preferable way of funding it, but that doesn't mean that providing a governmental baseline for everyone isn't effective in the very first place. It is incredibly important to establish a baseline for everyone in terms of retirement, while simultaneously arguing that there needs to be a more effective revenue mechanism for Social Security in the first place. Why can't you just acknowledge that both can be done?
The question is, Parker, your
Can you
return on
acknowledge that both
investment.
can be done?
You didn't answer
Because
my
I
question.
actually
Can you
did.
answer my?
I actually
No,
did explicitly address the fact that
you
I agree
interrupted and I
that there
didn't get to
needs.
answer the question.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
didn't get to ask the question. Is it okay if I ask the question?
Go ahead.
The question is, your return on investment. Obviously, it's better if you mimic the S&P 500 over Social Security. Why would you want? It's your money, Parker. Why would you want it put through the Washington system where I don't know the numbers on this, maybe you can figure it out, but the return on investment is nowhere near 11 or 12% and mimicking the S&P 500. Is that correct? Is that a correct statement?
I don't know where you're getting 11 to 12. I think that's a misrepresentation of the S&P over the last 50 years. I'd probably go with somewhere around the number of 8. But in
Okay,
terms
if you
of,
use
and
inflation,
can I
not
please speak
inflation, yeah.
without, you just complained about me being cut off, but you're
My
cutting me off right
apologies.
now. Is that
Yeah.
okay for me to finish?
Yep.
Okay. So I can acknowledge that there needs to be a more effective revenue mechanism in terms of Social Security, and that currently, right now, it's less effective to tax people and then fund it directly rather than to create a sort of sovereign wealth fund that increases the level of investment of each particular investment you put in originally, indexed to certain index funds. I think that's a preferable way of funding a Social Security type system rather than just leaving it up to Social Security as we currently fund it. But that doesn't at least address the point that Social Security from a baseline provides a baseline of retirement that significantly reduced elderly poverty, right? Because inevitably in these circumstances, there are individuals that are going to have things happen to their retirement. Things happen in life. That's totally reasonable for you to not have a retirement at that particular point in time because of things happening to you in your life. And I think that the government should exist to take care of people in those circumstances, given that they didn't have that to take care of themselves. Now, can we have a more effective revenue mechanism? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a baseline.
Well, that was super articulate. You are a very intelligent person. I have no doubts about. But at the end of the day, what I'm hearing is, yes, we're giving the people something. Something is better than nothing, which I would agree. Not giving them any social security at all, just keeping it would be worse. But what's wildly better, this is what I'm saying, and this affects you as a young person. What's wildly better is giving them at least the amount of money that mimics the greatest investment vehicle in the history of the world, the U.S. stock indexes, and
You can do that funded through the
and
government.
instead of going through Washington and paying all these corrupt people and risking all this fraud because we're all human, um, let's take the government out of it as much as we possibly can. Mimic the S&P 500, give much greater returns for people in retirement, and this effect. Well, this doesn't. It looks like you're doing pretty well for yourself, but think about the people that aren't going to be doing as well as you, Parker. They're going to be given just enough to survive, and we're going to say be happy with it. At least you have more than zero. That's your argument. At least you have. At least we didn't take it.
No, no, my argument is that elderhood poverty is significantly lower under my system comparative to yours. I think you're incredibly idealistic. Of course, I would love for everyone to have the perfect investment portfolio catered to all of their needs that are going to establish the perfect retirement for them. But I acknowledge that that's not how the world works. I acknowledge that inevitably there are going to be circumstances where that won't happen. And it's an incredibly privileged understanding of the state of affairs in the world, especially from a historical lens, where we see significantly higher rates of elder poverty right prior to the implementation of Social Security, where now we see significantly lower levels of elderhood poverty, given that we've seen this implementation of Social Security. So the baseline has been effective, but obviously we need to rework the investment in the very first place because we need to have a sovereign wealth fund and we need to have an ROI that is better off. So we can be smart with our money and still say that the government can do something to radically improve the lives of the people. You just said leave it up to the free market. That would mean getting rid of Social Security. That would mean getting rid of Medicaid. That would mean getting rid of Medicare. That would mean getting rid of unemployment insurance. That would mean getting rid of every single governmental program that provides a baseline for people in terms of all of these different basic services that are required to live within the society that exists today.
But I mean, first of all, bravo, you're fantastic at this, extremely articulate. Kudos to you. What what I still can't get away from the fact is you talk about taking away Social Security. I'm talking about 10xing Social Security. I'm talking about increasing these people's wealth. I'm saying,
Wait, can
here's
I
what I'm
tell you
saying.
what my position is? I think
I'm
you're
saying
misunderstanding
freedom.
my position.
Okay,
So
I'll listen to you some more and let me know when I can say my position.
I will right after. So if we gave $7,000 to $10,000 to each kid when they were born, we put it in an index fund, the S&P 500 or any other index fund, and we tied that to the level of growth that we've seen over the past 50 years, that would have them around $1 million for each person. Okay, so that is an effective way that we could fund these systems with significantly less money. That would only cost around $30 billion a year for all the kids that are born every single year. Now you can go.
Okay. Here's what I'm saying is freedom. Okay. I can't get away from this freedom. And you talk about idealistic. Yeah, I can't get away from this freedom idea, and I think people are smart enough to figure this stuff out on their own. I think we need to focus on educating people well in the schools, civics, food, water, and shelter. But not to get off on a tangent there. But either way you cut it, if you look at Social Security, and let's just say you're not Parker, let's say you're somebody else and you're turning 65, and you don't have any money saved, and you live in a crappy place in Chicago, what are you going to do? You know, you take the money the government gives you, and it's just enough to survive, and then you're stuck. That is not anything close to freedom as far as I'm concerned. And by the way, the government took a ton of money from you and your employer on your behalf and did stupid things with it because there's 47 slimy politicians a day putting their hands in your money. But anyway, we're not going to agree on this. You think government's the answer? I don't. That's about it. But kudos to you, man. You got a great show. You're killing it. You're very articulate. Good luck.
Okay, can I address this? So,
Sure.
there's a bit of an issue there. You're not acknowledging that government can be reworked and can work in a better way. Just because historically speaking, there's been corruption that's existed within it, doesn't mean that there's always bound to be. And what I would argue is that you should probably stop voting in corrupt politicians if you want more freedom within society. I mean, you're supporting a guy that's undermining the Constitution and our democracy. That doesn't seem to be pro-freedom. And really, the notion of freedom that you're just referencing is the freedom for people to starve, the freedom for people to not have access to basic amenities like healthcare, and the freedom for people to die a horrible death. That's literally what you're talking about, because these standards and basic systems are meant to ensure that no one dies like that, right? That's the type of society that we want to create. That's what we want, inevitably. Is that not what you want?
Uh, well, the premise of your question is totally off. I don't think your way is the best way to handle that. That's what we're talking
I'm
about
sorry.
here.
Can you give me any point in history where the free market alone would be at all able to address that? Do you really
Yeah, I
think that
mean,
the free market alone, historically speaking, did that? Because historically speaking, I see mass death, mass starvation, mass lack of access to healthcare, mass poverty, with us not establishing these social systems for people overall. Okay? There
well,
needs to be regulations in the system, or you're going to have people be disenfranchised. This isn't more freedom. Okay, my system,
sure.
objectively speaking, creates better conditions for the average person, and I would inevitably say creates a more free society.
Well, the more, let's ask this. Trump's a terrible buddy, and his administration's terrible. You don't want them to have more power. You want them to have less, correct?
I think Congress is who appropriates funding, right? And
Okay,
I want
but
them to have less power, right? Means I want them to be elected out of office, but I don't want there to be less funding for healthcare or for childcare or for housing affordability. Just because I disagree with Trump does not mean I agree with defunding those programs.
well, broadly, and I'm not a great debater like you, but broadly, um, I think if we don't take money from people, if we don't, say, hey, we're taking your money or we're putting you in jail, if we give them more of their money back, we have less poverty. We have better health care. We have the rest. I think when you go through Washington and give it to the government, you're going to have a crappier product. And like I said, just on our example a while ago, if I give you $10 and you go out and help as many people as you can, that's way more efficient than if that $10 goes into the system. And I postulate on the other side of it, maybe 50 cents goes to
Yeah, but
that
you're
project if
assuming
we're
all
talking
of those
efficiency.
dollars are going to help someone. Okay, when all of someone's income isn't doing that, right, within a typical sense, if you just leave it up to private charity. If you just left it up to private charity, right, well, how much money would you get to be able to help people versus if you have taxation to be able to do so? I promise you, you'll get way more money through the context of taxation than you will if you just crowdfunded it through the context of private charity. Also, Trump increased your taxes by imposing tariffs. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, Initially, I would expect that. I mean, initially, everything's going to go up, like you said. I completely agree with that. I mean, that's why fixing this problem where we took all the jobs to Mexico, it takes a moment. You can't reverse decades and decades of this terrible policy overnight.
That's
But
not free market. I thought you just argued for the free market. So those jobs going to all those other countries, that's just the
wait,
free
how's that?
market, bro.
No, the
Cope.
free American market. You think it
What?
means free
Freedom.
world
That's
market?
freedom. That's freedom, bro.
No, no,
Cope.
no.
You
Well,
said you wanted freedom. You wanted
okay,
capitalism,
free.
but now you're arguing for no freedom?
Well, do you think I'm saying that freedom means you can just go out and pop somebody because that's your freedom to
Freedom,
do
no,
so?
freedom means free
No,
market.
freedom means where.
Sir, do you think tariffs are free market?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's
They're
it's it's
not.
actually, look,
Milton Friedman
government.
would not agree with you.
Do I think taxes, or I mean tariffs, are free market? Yeah, I think it goes along the lines of we got to have a system. We don't want no government. We want
Can
limited
you
government,
define free
right?
market?
Uh, as little regulation with as much order in a system where people can freely make their own decisions on their goods and services. And remember, I'm not you. I don't have a computer in front of me. I'm just some dude works for a living.
Couldn't
And
I say the same thing would then be applied to my system? So I believe in a free market then?
you believe in a free market? No, you're for what I would call overregulation, like
No, no, no.
the
I would
regulations,
argue
like.
that my level of regulation is within the level that's good. Because it sounds like you're just saying like, okay, a free market can still just maintain some level
Okay.
of regulation that you think is okay or within a threshold. And I would say under my position, it meets within my threshold
I mean,
of a free
there was
market,
this
right?
there was a story in Kansas City one time that I read about a restaurant having to spend $2,500 to put a door between the kitchen and the dining room that cost $2,500. Now,
I don't
that
know
may
why you're
sound like
randomly
no.
bringing this up. Do you think I'm advocating that every single person should have to buy a $2,500 door? Come on, you're being
Yeah,
ridiculous. Wait,
okay. I'm
because you
assuming.
agree with regulations existing means you agree with all regulations existing? That's called a straw man.
No, I'm saying there are over regulations, and maybe there are some that we agree on. That's great, but there's also some,
Can you
I'm
mention any
guessing, that you
overregulation
think
that
is good,
Democrats
and
support? Like, be
no,
specific.
nah, again, I would like to take every instance one at a time. I'm not going to broadly say every Democrat, every Republican, whatever. That's dumb. But as a general rule, how can you possibly deny that the more regulations you have, the less job growth and the rest, right? That's just a physics principle almost, if you will. But look, I'm kind of getting off topic here, and I got nothing more to say, and I'm not adding to the conversation, but I'll just listen. But I mean, that was my point, though. Like, jobs being outsourced, that happens over decades. To say that we're gonna fix that in 5 minutes is not realistic and not genuine, in my opinion. But that's all I
Yeah,
had to
that's
say.
not what I was asking for, and that's another straw man on your behalf.
All right, have a good
Before
evening.
you leave, though, can I ask you one more question?
Sure, sure.
Is there anything Trump could do that would get you to stop supporting it?
Anything that I so one thing I'm watching real close right now is if he is protecting anybody in regards to harming children and the Epstein thing. Absolutely. I don't
No,
mess with,
well, he's
like,
done
I
that.
think.
Called
I,
Marjorie
I
Taylor Greene a traitor because she wanted to release the files. He said that anyone who wanted to release the files never supported him in the very first place. He called them a hoax.
Yeah, you're right. I don't have an answer for why he's doing that. He hasn't said why those things happened, and if I find out later that there was supporting of somebody who harms children, because the harming children thing, I'll tell you what. Here's a question for me: is there anything you could do to get me to vote for a Democrat? And largely no. But if a Democrat come out and said, "Hey, everybody that harms a child, I'm going to have this severe punishment," and I probably can't even say punishments on TikTok, but let me just say, it's like getting popped or losing your genitalia would be the only two options, and probably both of those for anybody that harms a child. I'm probably voting for that Democrat.
Okay,
Um,
so why don't you support the candidates and the Democrats that wanted to hold people in the Epstein files accountable to a greater extent? Every single Democrat voted to release the files. Trump is the one who wanted to prevent the release of the files. So you probably shouldn't vote for the guy who wants to prevent the release of the files over the individuals that are arguing for the release of the files.
yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I just know he did release the files, and before he did, I was very hard on it. But yeah, he ultimately did, and the Democrats had all this time; they never did.
So you don't support him
So
anymore?
no, I do. I was very critical of him
You
when
just said that
he
would be a
was
reason to not
stopping the
support him.
release. What's that?
You just said that would be a reason to not support him if he was protecting P3DOs and the Epstein files, which is
Yeah,
exactly
if I
what he's
found out he
done.
was protecting anybody in the Epstein files or
Which is
something.
exactly what he's done.
Oh, well, I don't agree with that. I don't have proof of that. What's your evidence of that?
He called Marjorie
Criticizing
Taylor
Marjorie
Greene.
Taylor Greene?
Yeah, I'll give you multiple pieces of evidence. He called Marjorie
Okay.
Taylor Greene a traitor because she wanted to release the files. He called her saying, "This is going to hurt my friends. Please don't do this. They're good people." right? That's
But
what he said. He also explicitly said that anyone who wants to release the files never supported him in the first place. He called them a hoax, right?
but we don't know what that means, right? We don't know what that means. You're assuming that means like somebody who
Oh, come
harmed a
on.
child.
How dishonest do you
It's
have to be?
politics.
This is called TDS, Trump devotion
What,
syndrome.
what do you mean? Trump devotion syndrome. Okay, I like
It
that.
is. It
But
is. Like, it is.
but
Like, you
we
can't
don't
see
have
past
evidence
this? Are
of
you
that.
serious?
That couldn't be used in a court of law. That is just somebody who is trying to, prove their political point. I'm looking for evidence. And yeah, to answer your question,
I did provide evidence.
your evidence is that he said, "You're protecting my friends," is what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. Somebody who is obviously not a Trump fan.
Wait, why?
So,
Why?
so
She
a
was
witness,
the biggest Trump fan. What do you mean she's obviously not a Trump fan? Imagine saying that to someone a year ago.
right? I agree, but she's
Like,
obviously
seriously,
not now.
bro. Like, come on.
She-
Like,
she-
what do
she's
you mean?
obviously
She
not
was
now,
like
and
the
she said
biggest
that.
Trump follower.
Why are you saying she's a Trump fan now?
She
I mean, do we
was,
agree on that?
and she's now not because she wanted to
agree on
release the
both of those
files.
things.
She thought, of course, she's going to release the files, and then he
and when did
literally
she-
backstabbed her, and then tried to prevent the release of the files, and then literally tried to undermine her because she just wanted to release the files. Look, Thomas Massie. Why did Trump say that Thomas Massie was the worst congressional member in the history of the country?
When did Marjorie
Can you
Taylor
answer
Greene?
the question? Why did Trump say that Thomas
You made
Massie
a point that I want to
was the-
address. You brought it up. I
Yeah,
want
so
to
can
make
you
I
answer?
want to make a point before we move on. We'll go straight to Thomas Massie after this. But
Okay.
when did Marjorie Taylor Greene say that Trump said this thing about his friends being hurt? When she was a Trump fan or when she wasn't a Trump fan?
Well, and now she's saying that she's not a Trump fan, of course. I don't understand. I don't.
Yeah,
Was that supposed to be like an own?
So if I
Was that
if I'm
supposed to
trying
be an own?
No, I'm not into owning. I don't care about that stuff. I care about the truth.
No, like you just
So-
You just laughed. What do you mean you don't care about owning and stuff? That's what you just laughed. You just laughed. Like what?
Oh well, my apologies. I didn't mean to offend you. What
That
I'm saying
wasn't
is,
offending to me. I was just pointing out the fact that you saw that as an own.
oh, I didn't say that as
Don't
see
gaslight
that
me.
as an own. That
You
I
did. That's
didn't
why
mean
you
it that
laughed.
way.
Isn't how why you laughed?
No, it's not. And unless
Interesting.
you're a mind reader, I don't know.
I
how
don't
you
need.
would
I don't need
know that.
telepathy to know that that was you thinking that you had a win there. Come
I mean,
on.
we know each other now. I've talked to you for 30 seconds.
Dude, how
all-
dishonest.
All
I'm
right.
not stupid.
Okay, but you do you. I'm just telling you, I didn't mean that as an own or whatever. I don't care about
Mhm.
winning debates. This is a whole dumb little process. I care about the truth. So all I'm saying is, for me to objectively look at this, I got to take that into account, right, Parker? I got to take into account that she was not a Trump fan when she said those things. This is stuff that would be brought out in a court of law, in a trial, right? So anyway, and you wanted to talk about Thomas Massie. Go ahead. I got like 30 seconds here.
Okay, why did Trump say that Thomas Massie was the worst congressional member in the history of this country?
But no denying this. Trump is a nasty fighter, and he does not play nice, and he pulls hair, and he kicks in the kahunas.
Why does he
I like
not
Thomas Massie. I like a lot of things. Thomas Massie, I think, has went up against about every policy that
Really?
you can think
Can you
of.
name the policies that Thomas Massie has gone against Trump on?
Yeah, I mean, he was against the big, beautiful bill, right? All the spending stuff, I'm pretty sure he's against. But I don't have a list in front of me. And I don't have a computer. So
Is that all you
tell
have
me
to say?
Tell me if I'm wrong about this. Well, no, that's the point. I mean, he's, Thomas Massie. Here's the thing with Thomas Massie. I like Thomas Massie. He's a guy that's very principled, and I like the morality of Thomas Massie. But you can't get everything you want and just say, hey, in a gridlock system like we have, and say, hey, I'm
So wait, by the
not
way,
gonna
the
vote
way
for
that he
any of
responds
Trump's
to this
policies.
is not by acknowledging the actual reason why Trump responded this way, but he's going to say it's because of the big beautiful bill. Really? You think he did this because of the
No,
who's the
I'm
other
saying it's
person
because
that
of every single policy.
why wasn't
And
the
Epstein,
other
yeah,
person
you're
why
saying-
wasn't,
you're saying
why
Epstein,
wasn't the
Epstein,
other
yeah.
Republican that voted against the big beautiful bill the worst congressional member in the history of this country?
Yeah, it's every single policy is my answer, not the big beautiful bill. But am I wrong about that? Is there not a ton of policies? But yeah, Epstein certainly
It's
was
not
not
every
something that he
policy.
was happy
It's quite
about.
literally the big beautiful bill, Epstein
Sure.
files, and the war with
okay,
Iran,
I didn't
and that's
mean
like literally
100%
it.
of the policies. My apology. I didn't mean 100% of the policies. I'm just broadly. This is how normal people talk.
Those are three
know,
things, though.
A lot of the policies he was against. How about that?
Just three.
Is that okay
Is
to
three
say?
a lot?
Three's the total? That's the
Yes.
total number? That's shocking to me. I mean, he's criticized Trump on the Iran war.
That's
On
what that was one of
Epstein,
them.
on the
That
big
was the
beautiful
second.
bill,
That was the
on
third.
spending,
That was within the
on
big beautiful bill.
I'm sure manufacturing and the normal Democrat talking
Nope.
points. I'm assuming
Nope.
he's criticized him on all those things.
Nope.
I'm not
He's
just
not a
talking
Democrat.
legislation.
He actually explicitly says, "I agree with 91% of Republicans and what they're doing, and when they're not doing what I want them to do, they're taking up for P3DOs and warmongers." That's what he said.
Okay. Well, I don't have a computer in front of me. I'm not able to make the points you are, but
I'm not
if you
even
tell me
getting
it's
these from a
three,
computer.
I'm gonna go with those for now. Well, I mean, you do this for a living, right? I work for a living. We do different
I work
things.
for a
9 to
living.
5.
This is what I do for a job.
You do. I took a shot at you there. I'm glad you smiled and moved on from that. But I have a different job. But yeah, that's all I got to say. I'm not well versed on all this stuff, but I do know that him and Thomas Massey do not get along. But my thing with Thomas Massey, if I can just say real quick, is if he's got an idea of what he wants to happen with every single issue, and that's fine. But he's decided, hey, I'm not voting with the Republicans. The problem with that is in a gridlocked Congress, one vote is huge, right? Like you can't, and all that happens is you end up with Democrat nonsense if he doesn't vote with you. You know, he's a wasted vote. So of course you go after him
That sounds
politically.
good. W Democrat nonsense.
But obviously you go after him if you're a Republican. The Democrats do the same thing, right? They want to primary Fetterman, I'm sure. But anyway, I'm not making great points right now. I got nothing else to say, so I'll let you move on.
All right, bye.
Have a good one.